The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome to Sister Speak. Today you're joined with me, Lamisa, in the studio. I think we also have Fareen online. Fareen, if you're there, do you want to say hi?
Assalamu alaikum everyone. I'm here, I'm online.
Fareen's joining us online, and then we've got a special guest with us today, Aqsa. Aqsa, do you want to say hi?
Assalamu alaikum everyone.
Yes, Aqsa was a former presenter of ours a while back. How does it feel being back here?
Honestly, it's absolutely amazing. And just before Lamisa even starts speaking, I just want to say how proud I am of the show. And honestly, it has come leaps and bounds. The meticulous nature of the show, the refinement of the show over the pretty much of the last 6 years has been amazing. And credits to you guys. I know Mariam's not here at the moment, but a quick shout out to Mariam as well, who has and planned this show itself. And to me, it feels so at home. It doesn't feel like I've been away. Maybe the structures have changed a bit and the room itself, but just amazing. And to the sheer work and effort and hard work that goes into running a great show that has an amazing intention. Yeah. It is just so humbling to see. So you know what? Well done, you guys.
Thank you, Aqsa. Well, you guys started it off for us, which was great. You gave us a great platform to go off. So we thank you guys for that.
Thank you.
Today we do have quite an interesting show planned for today. Our main topic is surrounding nourishing career paths into secondary education. So a really important topic, to be honest. I guess since we might have some listeners that have never listened to our show before, I'll just let you know what our show's about. So our show is a platform for Muslim women to voice their opinions on various different topics and events. We just want to let everyone know that all opinions and views are our own, and that we respect all other similar or opposing views and opinions. And Fareen, you're online. Do you want to let everyone know where they can get in contact with our show if they do want to let us know their thoughts?
Yep, you can call us on 01582481822, or you can send us a WhatsApp message on 07794811822. You can also DM us if you have any thoughts after the show on our Instagram at Sister Speak. And that's it. Do call in during the live and ask Aqsa questions about anything that you want. She'll be happy to answer.
Yeah, exactly. Great stuff. I guess let's just get into our first segment of the show, which is Thoughts for the Week. So Aqsa, after a very long time, do you want to share your thought for this week?
Oh, my thought for the week. I totally forgot that we're still doing this. I think my thought for the week, and it is Wednesday, but if you do, and this is for everyone listening, is if you do have a sort of a hard start to the week, don't let it shape the entire week. And I think that's something that I would go and take forward and have been taking forward for quite a few months now. I'll get into that later, but it is sometimes that one hard day does not need to shape that entire week, doesn't need to shape the week after. And sometimes that thought can turn into an intrusive thought, but sometimes just closing it off and dealing it within that time, but then moving on and not letting that shape that positive week that you have set forth. So that's my thought of the week.
Such a very important thought for the week as well. I feel like a lot of us, we do have, some things that bog us down. And it's really easy to bring that negative energy along with you the whole week. But you're very right. Just deal with it there and then. And
what's yours?
If you can, try and move on. I'll come to mine. I'm going to let Fareen say her thought for the week first, and then we'll get on to my one. So Fareen, what's your thought for the week?
My thought of the week, I really want to talk about grudges and a bit about, forgiving people. And about grudges, I want to say in friendships, it's always so important to understand that, we all grow up, and it doesn't matter if you've been friends for, 10 years. At the end of the day, people change. And if that chemistry is not there, then it's not a big deal. You're going to find someone after those 10 years that you're going to be close with. Obviously, it's sad. There's 10 years of friendship, but people change, and the way that you think change, your personality changes so much, especially after 10 years. So I think just being friends with someone for the sake of being a friend and not actually, fulfilling that friendship is, for me, in my opinion, I don't think it's worth it. And it's just better to, let it go and just, move forward. So that's my thought of the week.
And I know you said that it is sad, but actually, and sometimes it can be a happy thing. Instead, you can remember all the good times, all the good memories, and give it a good farewell. And you're very right in saying that people change after 10 years. 10 years is a very long time, Farine. So yeah, thank you for that thought for the week. So now on to my thought for the week. So my one is kind of going off the back of your guys' one in terms of time. I was just talking to Aqsa about this before the show, about how quickly time flies. It kind of, it's been 6 years since I've seen Aqsa. So much has happened in that time. And I'm just thinking, I was looking back to when I first, in my mind, I was thinking back to when I first came into the studio, when I first had my interview with you guys.
Yes.
And it was so long ago, and yet it just seems like yesterday. And I was back in school then.
Well, you still look the same. That's a positive.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Or maybe I just looked old back then. I don't know.
Full of wisdom,
Full
maybe.
Of wisdom. But yeah, it's crazy. Time definitely flies. And I guess my thought for the week really is just, as cheesy as it might sound, but try and seize the day, try and seize the amount of time that you do have. And I know it's really easy for a lot of us to waste many hours on the day, kind of scrolling through various forms of social media. But yeah, try and make use of the time that you do have is my thought for the week. Okay, I guess that wraps up our thoughts for the week this week, and I'll move on to the hot topics that we have planned. Well, I guess it kind of goes in line with my thought for the week in terms of looking back at our aspirations when we were younger and where we are now. In that time, do you feel like you kind of fulfill those aspirations that you have when you were younger? Has life played out differently to how you thought it would play out? It's kind of going along those sentiments. So what do you think?
I think fulfillment comes in many different ways. Right now, fulfilled 100%. And, sometimes leaving a place of work, leaving your home before you go into work, my heart is full. And I think that's really important. But in terms of the journey so far, wow, it's not the journey that I planned at all. And that sort of goes into a little bit of context of, where I am right now and where I first started off many, many, many years ago. And I don't want anyone to think that I am, here as someone that is completely experienced in my field and has, years and years and years of knowledge, but just to show the trajectory of where I am and some of the positives as well as some of the negatives that I've overcome, faced, and have been challenged with. And I think gearing on where I would have liked to be, I remember growing up and thinking, at a 10-year-old Aqsa, remembering one of my cousins asking me, what do you want to do? And I remember my thing was, I like to build stuff, and that was very cliche. Not so cliche as, when you grow up with those stereotypical ideas of being a young girl and your career aspirations are sort of rooted towards some of those, or some people might seem those as, gearing towards some of those stereotypical career roles. But no, I was like, I want to be a builder. I want to build things. And it's sort of, I never really thought of career paths. I never thought of it until I got to probably college. And that's when I started to really think about who I wanted to be. And more so into that second year of college, when you do your first set of or second set of mocks and you're gearing towards those end exams leading towards university. And I think that was the very first time that I really thought about where I wanted to go to. And I remember that was my very first blip when I applied to a university in that second year, and I applied to LSE, and I didn't get in, and I didn't even get an acknowledgement email. I never got a reason of why. I had amazing predicted grades. I had like an A star and AA, and I had an amazing personal statement that, I kid you not, I got so many people to check. But it just didn't happen. And I remember that rejection letter coming in so early, and that really was so disheartening. And I think that was the very first obstacle I faced when thinking of career paths, was that initial stage. And there wasn't an avenue to really talk about how that felt, and how to really overcome it. Just that was the very first blip. And I look back at that and think, oh, it's not a big deal. But I know exactly how it felt at that point. It was so discouraging. And I remember just looking at these predicted grades and thinking, for what? Why do I have these when I didn't get into the university I really, really wanted to? And then I applied to Queen Mary, where I got an unconditional offer. And then I sort of set my mind, and I thought, you know what, listen, this is what I want to do. And I teach history. So I remember thinking to now, obviously I teach history, but I remember for those 2 years of sixth form thinking, yes, history is something that I want to do. And then in that middle year, that second year, it was just not what I wanted.
Okay.
And I remember ringing up Queen Mary and thinking, this is not what I want. I want to change my course. And I went from history to politics.
Yeah.
And it was just, I had a look at this syllabus. I had a look at this specification and thought, this is what I want to do. And so I changed it mid-year. And I made 2 really, really big changes for someone that played it quite safe,
Okay.
I made 2 changes in that year, or two revelations almost in that year, knowing that really I didn't want to do history anymore, and I wanted to go into politics, or wanting to study politics. And then, just getting that rejection really, really early on. And then I geared towards it, and I had a very good time at Queen Mary, and I thought, wow, actually this was the right decision, right decision and the better choice. I've made 2 amazing lifelong friends, and who we've all gone through crazy stuff together, but we've pretty much remained very solid. And I think to myself, you know what, sometimes that sort of barrier, that rejection actually has a lot of wisdom behind it, and we won't see it straight away, and it will happen later on. But I just remember getting into Queen Mary and just thinking to myself, right, okay, it is a Russell Group university. This is something that I wanted, and I really enjoyed going in and really understanding what it was like. But it wasn't all glitz and glamour. I really saw politics for what it was, studying pretty much in the east heart of London. You really see it really big and bold everywhere. And I realised that's not something I wanted to get into. I just didn't want it.
Yeah.
I remember having a conversation with my dad, and he said, oh, you're studying politics. Do you want to go into governance? Do you want to go into the civil service? And I point blank said, no, this is not for me. I didn't like it. I didn't like some of the undertones when it came to politics. And I just put that to bed. And that was a rational choice that I made. And I made it in my 3rd year thinking, actually, no, as much as I enjoyed learning about a vast range of strands of politics from across the world. We looked at East African history. We looked at African civilization politics from the very beginning, all the way to Middle East. And we looked at the Suez Canal crisis, and we really, really went in depth. But when it came to actually wanting a career in it was a no for me.
But I guess studying that helped you realise that.
Absolutely.
And even though it was something that maybe you were considering back in sixth form, after going through that journey, you realise actually it's not what you want to do. And I guess from what you said, the biggest thing that I think resonates with me is the fact that life doesn't go exactly the way you planned. And even though, like we said, we don't have vast amounts of wisdom behind us, but it is a lesson that you need to learn, and I guess pretty early on, is that it is a journey, and it's not a journey you can plan out. You don't know how it's going to go, but it's about kind of just going with what's happening and seeing how it unfolds, and often it unfolds in the best of ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it just got to the point where I really just became a little bit more understanding of, okay, this was great to learn about, but not something I want to get into full time. And I my dad's very big on education and said, you know what, you still got 1 more year in it. Do you want to do a master's? And I was like, oh, not right now. But I had that sort of that accommodation of, you know what, no one's expecting, if you want to go out and you want to work and really go into industry, that's absolutely your choice. But if there's a year that you want to sit and study, that's also something that you want to do. So, but I wanted a bit of both. And so at 21, I decided as soon as I graduated, I wanted to do my PGCE, which is a postgraduate certificate in education. It gets you into teaching after a year, now 2 years of training. So that's something that I got into, and that sort of stems into sort of the career conversations and career paths into education. And I then realised, you know what, if there's a subject that I really want to teach, I want to teach history.
Okay.
You know, even though I didn't want to do it at a degree level, it's something that I really wanted to get into when if I was to teach any subject. I thought, you know what, there's something that I would love to teach, and I would love to make it my own and shape it as my own. And I got into it, and I remember, because I went and studied it in Bedfordshire rather than a Luton training program, because at that time there wasn't history really available as a teacher training program. And, you know, I was offered English, but I wanted to be true to myself. And I remember getting lots and lots and lots of marketing emails saying, you know what, you'll have a lifelong career in English, and, you know, it's always a core subject. But I thought to myself, no, I'm not going to be happy.
Yeah.
And if I'm not going to be happy, why would I do it? And then that sort of led into the career journey into teaching, and that got me into, you know, again, not settling in Luton per se, but then moving over and training over in Bedfordshire, which again was another great experience. And one thing I would say about, you know, being in university, I lived out. It was an eye-opening experience, and it was something that really gets you to understand, you know, the bigger picture. Okay. It gets you to really grasp the concept of cultural capital, understanding, engaging, empathizing, and being considerate of different languages, a different heritage, something that is not the norm to you, but also just being open-minded to be thinking about how others may lived, and really taking some of the you know, the goodness from the cultures that you do learn about, and you do come across, and you come across them very, very, very very abruptly, in the terms of, you know, you walk into a seminar or a lecture and then you have everyone from every walk of life. And I think that was so important. And living amongst people from different walks of life, you know, from different continents of the world, like East Asia or America. And that was very eye-opening. Yeah.
Verena's just about to go to university, aren't you?
Lovely.
What do you think about what Aqsa's just said in terms of, you know, what you have to anticipate, I guess?
So yeah, I relate so much because it just happened like a week ago, right? So I'm going to go to uni, and, you know, it's that second year of college, you feel so overwhelmed and so stressed.
Absolutely.
I remember I had so much anxiety about results day. You have anxiety about if you got into your uni, about everything. So when I got my results, I got into my firm choice uni. I was like, my life's settled now. All I have to do is, you know, go away to uni and study. But then, you know, that month after A levels, so from August all the way to September, all I was doing was researching my uni. You know, I was gonna do law, the subject, so researching like career paths and everything. And I spoke with my parents, and I wanted to change my course literally last minute. So this week, literally on Monday, 8 a.m. I sent an email to my uni and I said, I want to change my course. I don't want to do law anymore. And I was gonna do computer science first because, you know, my parents were a bit pushy on it, that do computer science. If you're going to change the course, do computer science. But, you know, instead of talking with my parents, I got some advice from other people, like Mariam, for example. And it's really true that I agree with Aqsa, you have to do a course that you're happy with, because it's going to be 3 long years. So if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to have motivation to do it. But it was a really stressful period. I'm still in the process of getting my course changed, and I literally start next Monday.
Wow.
But yeah.
But I guess in the future, I hope
it
goes
absolutely okay. Honestly, 100%, absolutely fine.
I hope the process goes smoothly, and I'm sure in the future, hope inshallah, a year down, you'll be, you know, you'll be thriving in your course. Inshallah. Yeah, I guess one important question to round up this hot topic. If you thought back to 10-year-old you or 15-year-old you, and if they could see where you are now, how do you think they would feel?
I hope they would be very proud. And I think it's important to stay true to yourself. It's important to know when something no longer feels right. And, you know, I don't want to put the message out there like, yeah, give up very quickly. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. It's go for it and put in effort. And you think to yourself, do you know what, you do sometimes have that gut feeling, think, it felt right, but now it just doesn't. But give it a try, you know, and make sure that you just keep going and keep putting in that effort to the point where you feel wholeheartedly and sincerely that you've done enough. And once you feel like you've done enough, but you still have that same feeling, that's when you need to know that it needs to be put to bed, and that becomes an experience. And that is something now that you need to learn from. And I think for that, it has taken lots and lots of time in order to understand what that looks like and sort of contextualize it as well as put it into words. But I think overall, yeah, I would hope so. And I think, again, it's just something that you just can't put into numbers. It's not a quantitative piece of data, but rather it's a matter of experiences. And that's what, I tell a few of my students, I'm like, sometimes it is that, that quality of your experience. It's what can you learn from it? Okay, cool. You didn't get a very, very good score, especially when they, when you got students coming in from year 11 and they just don't do well at the very beginning, and you're just like, it's okay, we still got time, we really 100%. Do have time. But just now see that as an experience, because you just need to. The more dwelling that you do, the overthinking that you do, really doesn't do any much goodness, but more so does that harm. And I think sometimes it's creating that mindset, and it takes time. It takes a lot of time. It's a lot of understanding who you are. And again, if I was to say to the 10 years ago Aqsa, I would just say, you know what, just know what you're doing is absolutely your path. It's yours. And it's no one else's. And there's no judgment that you need to put on yourself, because it's your learning journey. And that's how I think, even with any other aspect of life, whether that is, things that happen that are out of your control, you just look at this as an experience of your life, and that we have to take the goodness from it.
100%. I think that's an amazing thing, to say, and it's very, very true. Farine, what about you? Do you think if you look back at yourself 10 years ago, what would they say about you now?
I would be so surprised at the fact that I'm like on a radio show in the UK speaking about me going to my first year of uni. Because when I was, 10 years ago, when I was 9, all I was thinking when I'm going to go to the same university as like my childhood friends, and probably at this stage, I had so many things, and none of it was here, like where I am right now. But, it's life. And I think everything, like Aqsa said, every failure, anything, you should just see it as a blessing. And it takes me so much time to kind of understand that, because it's everything that's coming in front of you, it's all Allah's, deed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a plan behind everything. Well, I'm glad that, you guys are saying that the younger versions of you would be proud and would be amazed at what you're doing, because I think in a way it shows that you guys yourselves are proud and amazed at what you guys are doing, which is great to hear. Yeah, interesting. It's just interesting how life plans out. And absolutely, I think that's what I was trying to get at, is that 10 or 15 years ago, none of us would have thought that we'd be here at this moment right now. None of us could tell. And it's crazy how life pans out. I think for me, like 10 years ago at age 13, I didn't know that I'd be where I am. I didn't know that I'd be, back in Luton after living out after 5 years. I didn't know I'd be on a radio show. I didn't know that I'd be studying the course that I was studying, because I was not interested in medicine whatsoever as a child. I was never that kid.
Really?
Yeah, I was very much into journalism, and I was going to study English literature at university and things. It was a lot of different things. And I think it just goes to show as children how different our possibilities are, how wide our imaginations are, and where we think we are going to be. Even in terms of like life stages, I thought I'd be married by now and having kids. Which is,
you still got
so
lots and lots
funny.
of time.
I know, but it's like, as a child, you think of all these things, and you're with your friends, and you're in your little group, and all you do is go to school, you chat, and you come back, and then you become an adult, and life changes like so much. And but we go out there, we have the experiences, and I think that's what truly makes us into the people that we are. Do you think that getting out of Luton, almost having an experience where you've lived outside of Luton, do you think that that's quite an important thing to do and have?
I think I was just like you. I thought I wouldn't really come back, and that is absolutely no disrespect to Luton.
I love Luton. I'm the biggest Luton advocate.
Absolutely, it's so progressive, and we've got so many wonderful initiatives out there that is just making Luton on that big map, okay? And that's not just our football, that's just so much more that's going on behind the scenes. I think, having that experience is very beneficial and it's positive. And it's going back to what I just previously said about the concept of understanding and being empathetic and being compassionate. And one of the best things that we can ever do in life is be compassionate. Anyone can have empathy, but compassion has solutions. Okay. When you're a compassionate person, you make those solutions. When you see something and you think, wow, oh my God, that person, had a different upbringing and maybe doesn't see the same, or maybe doesn't have the same views as me. And we see that with our young people today. As soon as it's like, oh my God, they don't have the same, I don't know, religious view or political view as me, that's it. We're not talking to them anymore. And I think we're starting to change that a lot, and it's coming from the young people themselves. You had that, and I remember growing up seeing that in young people, and now it's almost like putting a sort of a line towards that and thinking, you know what, actually, we still have to be empathetic to each other, but then me just understanding your culture shows my compassion towards, and now let's come up with a solution. And I think
that's something that we'll continue on in the second half of the show.
Absolutely.
I'm so sorry to have to wrap it up there, but please do join us after the break. Inshallah, we'll be delving more into that and more into our main topic, which is nourishing career paths into secondary education. But we'll see you then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
You're listening to an Inspire FM podcast, making available our popular programs from our daily broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome to Sister Speak. Today you're joined with me, Lamisa, and we've also got Aqsa in the studio today. Before the break we were just discussing about kind of our experiences and where life has taken us. Aqsa, you were saying just before the show that it's really important to get an experience outside of Luton. Do you want to finish off that point?
Yeah, no, me and Lamisa were just talking about just the importance of having that enriched experience and learning and empathizing and being compassionate towards those that we know have a different viewpoint towards us. And I think that out of town experience really does build on that, and it's just always knowing who you are whilst you're going through those experiences, and that's self-explanatory itself. So but then also just understanding and knowing that there's a bigger world out there, and we shouldn't just be capped at this specific moment at this specific time in a town.
And it gives you an experience of how to navigate outside of our town. We are quite lucky in a way that we have people who are very similar to each other in this town. We're growing up in quite tight-knit communities, but the real world out there is quite different, and you need to learn how to navigate with people who are not like you. And I do think that going outside of Luton helps you to do that and have that experience. I guess that wraps up our hot topic. So I'll move on to the main topic now, which is nourishing career paths into education and into secondary education. So just to give a bit of background about Aqsa's head of aspirations, and she's a student head of aspirations and student development at her school, and she's a teacher of history as well. And so do you want to give a bit of a background as to why you chose this topic in particular for today?
I think choosing this topic was important just because, I look back at my journey, including this year, 6 years ago, when I decided to get into teaching, and I didn't have much of a voice, and I didn't have anything that, had my voice that looked like me, that came from the same background as me. When you go into the student forums, online, you don't see people that share that same culture and background as I did, and sometimes that can also be disheartening, not because someone else from a different culture doesn't have a great viewpoint, no, but sometimes that familiarity does create a sense of creates a better sense of understanding. And I think it's also acknowledging that there is culture and faith and culture does play such a big part in making so many making so much of our decisions. So I think that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk about this topic. And if anyone is out there, and I know people start to think about career options, especially going into the third year of university and knowing what's out there, and some people really do want to work with children, and I really wanted to make sure that this could, and especially a platform like Sister Speak, could open that voice and that conversation to such an important topic and career path that so many people in this town hold. And I think that's one of the main reasons of the intent behind the topic itself.
Okay. And we're definitely going to get into that right now. So, Aqsa, do you want to give a bit of an understanding as to what your background is, and then how that led you into teaching?
So I'll just, before going into the role itself, so just coming into teaching, 6 years ago, applied for a PGCE and went on to do my initial teacher training. And I did it across 2 schools. Now, one was a little bit out of Luton, and the other one was I would say in Luton, but more of the impoverished part of Luton. And I think that also gave me a big eye-opening of what teaching in mainstream public schools was really like. And so that was sort of where my journey was in my very first year. And I remember, and I'm so want to be so transparent, is when I got into my second placement, which was the little bit more of the challenging secondary school, I thought to myself, I didn't want to be here. And that was my initial thought. I remember getting into the placement. I had 2 placements. The first one started from September to December of that year. And then in January till June, I had the second placement. And normally initial teacher training, you either go through 2 placements. Some teacher training providers put you into 2 placements, as well as a primary school placement, which is a week, and an SEND provision where you work with special needs children, and you actually have a holistic view of what teaching looks like. So, I had all those experiences as well as the 2 big placements, and I think my second placement, which was the longest one, was an eye-opener into what the actual system look like and some of the broken aspects of the system, frankly. And sometimes deprivation does have such a negative impact on our young people. And I just thought to myself, this is such an amazing, it is an amazing school with amazing children, but I can't be this passionate teacher without support. And I remember, and this is why I always say experiences are really important and trying out different places are important, because I just remember basing my judgment on teaching based on that one secondary school. And I just remember falling a little bit ill in that placement as well. And sometimes I just feel like I just jumped to conclusions and sort of put 2 and 2 together and said, the reason why I'm falling ill is because of this placement. But I don't think that was the case. It may maybe be a contributing factor, but not the initial factor, not the main one. So, I was really a bit disheartened about that. But then, I got into a job, into teaching, not the 2 placements that I had, but actually got into Denby High School, and which is the current school that I'm teaching at the moment. And it is, funnily enough, my secondary school as well, and which is quite a unique experience. But I never thought I would go back, and that was the thing. I always say I never thought I'd go back. I had, when everyone's applying in that January window, I just remember applying to so many different schools inside and outside of Luton, and I just went to a few placements. I went to a few interviews, as well as going out and actually looking at the school. And I just remember having a conversation with one of the former deputy heads at the school, and I just felt to myself at that point, that initial point in January when I was starting this brand new placement as well, and going to the interview to Denby, I just thought to myself, if I'm going to if I was going to get into teaching in my town, I want to really serve my own community. And that's what I wanted to do. And I remember just having this really, really in-depth conversation with a former deputy head of the school who actually interviewed me. And we just spoke about challenges, we spoke about deprivation, we spoke about so many things towards the end. And I just felt like, okay, I've had a very, very warm conversation here. And again, I just was offered the job, and I took the job, and I think that in itself, some people end up taking a job in their training school, which is absolutely fine, and then uniquely just took a job at the secondary school that I also went to, and I think that in itself was an experience. Now I remained a teacher from that point, so I think I graduated with the initial teacher training in 2019, and up until 2023 now I'm still in the profession, and there's been so many different development opportunities that has got me to the role I am in today. But one thing I would always say is, especially within teaching, is and I hope I have the same opinion in about 5 years or 10 years if I'm still in the profession, is never lose sight of the passion of teaching. You know, you can get sidetracked with roles and responsibilities because it's so much about teaching as well as pastoral, as well as safeguarding the children and the protective nature of those children. But always, just understanding and really, really meticulizing your skill. And your skill is always go as a teacher, and this is again a personal view, which you've said at the very beginning of the show, but it's always important to know what your bread and butter is. And I think as a teacher, your bread and butter is your teaching. And I think that's what I would say anyone that's going into a profession like this, and if you want to develop, just always know that part of the profession is so important, and it sets a tone of who you are and your willingness to want to give them a better future, give students essentially a better future. And I think that's really, really important. I was going to touch on that.
Was that one of the main kind of reasons as to you going back to the school that you essentially went to when you were younger, in terms of trying to give the kids now a better experience as well? Obviously, I'm sure the experience that you had during school was good as too.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's always about improving and building on things that we've had in the past, right?
And I don't, I would never go in and criticize institutions.
No, of course not.
I think it's more so refining yourself and refining your profession and seeing what works for you. And I think that's so important. I think rather than the structure itself, it's more, and the institution itself is rather refining your practice. And once you refine your practice and you build on the teaching skills that you have let's say, were first introduced to so many years ago, I think that's so important. It's making sure that you're really, really looking at those small minor experiences that you went to and trying to refine them and better yourself. And then you'll start to see the environment change around you as well when you do better yourself. And I think, going from that point to, whereas I am now, has been so many different development points. But I remember for the first 3 years of teaching, I just stuck to teaching. I didn't pick up any, what we call teaching and learning responsibilities, which, were abundant and were always there. But I just remember saying to myself, listen, you need to make sure that you need to be adequate at something, and you need to know how to, refine what we call pedagogy. And I really wanted to make sure that I had the skill set before I went in and, commanded or, wanted to coach anyone else. I really wanted to make sure that I coached myself, essentially. And last year, I decided, it's time for me to get into some type of a leadership role, and that's when I was offered an acting head of history role at the same school. And that was an experience in itself, because it was middle management. You're leading a team and leading a team of people that were older than me. And I think, again, it came down to experiences. It's knowing how to talk to someone. It's the communication and social skills that are really, really important. So I think having that balance of where you have your teaching, you have your subject knowledge. It's also knowing when you get into a middle leadership role to really know and navigate. And you might not do it perfect the first time around because it's something new, but just having that moment to talk to one another in your team. And then this year, I was lucky enough to, get into a head of aspiration and student development role, where it's pretty much looking after the careers aspect across the entire school, as well as sort of raising the aspirations of students, not only, not just through academia, but more so, that outside experience, that self-development experience. And I think that's where I didn't really think that I would have been 2-3 years ago, because I always felt that I was very curriculum, subject knowledge. And, and that was maybe pushing myself a little bit more on my teaching and getting into editorial. But I just thought it was just important to, again, have an experience and see what it's like itself.
And see what you can do in those other roles as
absolutely.
Well. In terms of, the roles that are available for teachers, for anyone who might be interested, or actually for anyone who hasn't even thought about teaching yet, in terms of where teaching can take you, do you want to touch a bit more about that?
I think, first of all, you need to just understand that there are different routes into teaching. I'm a secondary school teacher, but I have friends who are primary. And I think it's important just to understand the difference between the two.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I would always say, when you are applying or wanting to get into initial teacher training, is go out and go to different schools, before you get into actual teaching. You know, just because someone says to you, oh my God, you will make up, and you might have heard it before with anyone else, but you will make a great primary school teacher. And it's just like, but maybe her or his heart might be set on secondary school. But I would always say go out and really get a week worth of experience in a primary school, in a secondary school. Get a week experience. If you think, you know what, secondary school is something for me, I want to work with a little bit of more of the older children, then go to a really, really high attaining academically bright school where the attainment levels are very, very high, and go do a week there. And then do a couple of days at a school that you know of being more on the challenging side, and think, you know what, which type of school would I want to work in? You know, am I ready to take on massive challenges of, you know, pretty much deconstructing and reconstructing an institution that hasn't done well so far, and being a part of that journey? Or do I really want to make sure that I'm challenging myself intellectually and wanting to be in a school that there are and is a high level of attainment? So I think knowing where you want to head to is so important, and having that few weeks or months before finishing off your third year of university, go in and do those a few days. And I know any school can take you on, just say, listen, I want to go in and make sure you just have a DBS cleared, and just go in for a few days and just call up and say, you know what, I just want to see what it's like. What is it actually like in the classroom? What actually happens in the classroom? What are the logistics behind the actual teaching profession? And I think that's really, really important, just having that initial understanding. And then when you go in, you know, you get immersed into the teaching practice itself, and you know, you get pushed into subject knowledge, and you get pushed into pedagogy, which is the skill of teaching, and you learn so much on the job. But I think initially just knowing the path of which route to actually take is really, really important. And there's so much out there in our community as well, and there's so much out there. I know if you go into Twitter and you just type in Luton Teaching Hub, or you can type in any of the trust hubs that are across Luton Town, you can really get an indication of what it's like. And you just type in teacher training Luton on Google, and it will give you a vast array of different teaching schools that will offer and guide you through that process.
I see.
But that's what I would say at the very, very beginning of that initial teacher training, is just making sure that you gain that bit of an understanding probably a few months before, understanding the route that you want to take, the primary or the secondary. And I think that's really important. And talk to people as well. If you know that someone's in primary or secondary, or made that transition from secondary to primary school, which is a little bit more easier than primary to secondary, because you normally have to go through a subject enhancement course, as secondary is a little bit more subject specific rather than an all-rounder. Just having those really soft conversations amongst people that you know of, or external people. I know the radio, Inspire, has lots and lots and lots of networks of lots of teachers across the town, and I know that they will be happy to connect you with someone. But always having that understanding of what it's truly like, I think that's really important.
It's very sound career advice for any path, not just teaching as well, but for anything that you want to go into. Getting that experience beforehand, because it helps kind of guide your inner gut feeling in a way, because I feel like everyone always gets a gut feeling when they're in the right spot, and so when you have that experience, you know, you can tell. So very solid advice, thank you for that, Aqsa. In terms of why you chose secondary education in particular, do you mind going into that, and why you're a secondary school teacher?
I think I probably only have like 2 sentences for that, but I really do like working with the older children. There's just something about teaching teenagers. It's and this is personal, because I know maybe someone might feel like that with primary school, but it's so much vibrant. I love the conversations. It's a challenge in itself, and you're dealing with young humans, young people who are going through so many life changes within themselves, and you are guiding them. But you know, I always say, just having a lesson that you teach, and sometimes you leave there with a full heart. And I know I leave there with a full heart because I hope so. I can feel like I can communicate with them, and we have these rich discussions. And I think for me personally, I think secondary was my my outlet. And I came to teaching at 21, and I remember going into secondary schools, and the school that I was initially teacher training in my first placement was actually an upper school, and the students were, you know, I think the age range was 14 to sixth form, and I was just like, I just loved it, because I just liked working with those children, even though they thought that I was on the younger side. And you know, sometimes it's making sure you have those boundaries so they don't have those conversations. But it was just something that I was passionate about. It was the older children, the older age groups. That was something that I really wanted to work with. I just never, and I did a week, and this is, again, it comes from understanding of your own skill set, is I did a week in a primary school, and I think it was like a sort of a nursery attached primary school, and I did not like it. Okay. I just sat there at one point and I think it finished at like 3:00, and I thought, when you sit there and you're waiting for the clock to move,
yeah, of course,
that is when you know that's not for you.
Okay.
And I remember thinking to myself, this is not for me. I just didn't want to be there. And then going to secondary and having a little bit of a work experience in secondary, I thought, oh, okay, cool, this is something for me. This is something that I want to get into. And yeah, so that is just point blanket. It was just the passion towards teaching the older group that enticed me more than the younger group.
Group. And I guess with teaching as well, it's not just about teaching the subject that you're teaching about. It's about imparting those skills, imparting confidence, imparting belief onto the kids as well. And I guess with you probably see the potential of the kids that you're teaching, and that's
so early on. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's, again, when we look at education and career paths, you know, when you get into teaching, it's so important to build some of those relationships and knowing and telling them, and I'm quite explicit with them when it comes to managing some of the tougher parts of the job when it comes to the management of behavior of young people. I think allowing them to know explicitly that they have potential, it does so many wonders. It builds that relationship. When you just say, listen, I can see that potential from a mile away sometimes. It's just either the conversation, I you know, sometimes they're in the playground and I'm thinking, wow, okay, he knows how to talk. He's got very good talk, you know. Maybe he's not saying the right things at that moment, but I was like, okay, cool, he can articulate conversation. It's not to do with the subject, but yet he puts up a good argument, you know. You confront something and it's like, wow, I've got an argument, you know. And that's something that you see so early on. Sometimes you see charisma, sometimes you see, you know, the flair of the writing, sometimes you can see the, you know, the problem solving, the leadership so early on. And I think sometimes young people can get sidetracked, but as the professional in the room, as the adult in the room, I think it's a responsibility to always reassure them that they are bright, that they have potential in whatever way that may be, and however you might define the word potential, but just allowing them to know, actually, there's an entire world out there that you can conquer, and it's for you, but it's untapping that very, very early on. And I think, you know, I always use sort of positive reinforcement rather than the negative for behavior management in a classroom, is the idea of positively reinforcing those good standards and those good behaviors and making sure that that's consistent throughout the year, not just a one-off thing. Because sometimes you might be teaching that child from year 7 into late teenagehood, which is into teenagehood, which is 16, and you might have that 5-year long journey, and sometimes you don't want to start off with a bad relationship or on a bad foot, because sometimes it does set the tone, and we do forget that these are very bright young people who do and know how to make up their own minds when it comes to situations, and sometimes I would say sometimes, don't want to give them a lot of credit, but they do make good judgments, and they make very good first impressions, and they sort of really suss you out very early on, you know, especially those who keep consistent, you know, that when they look at consistency, they want to be there. You know, when you set the ground running and you set those tones of this is what I expect, is that something that sort of plays into then the second year or the third year, whether that's them going now into GCSE. And I think that's really important. We don't really talk about the aspect of behavior management. You think of behavior in a classroom, you think, oh, a teacher shouting, or, you know, someone laying down the rules. No, sometimes it is that conversation at the end of the day, you know, just speaking to that child, talking to them about the potential. And sometimes it does come across a bit abrupt because you are passionate, and sometimes it's frustrating when they don't see it and they just, you know, distract themselves with poor behavior, or, you know, they distract themselves when not wanting to do well because they don't see their own potential. And it may come down to insecurities, it may come down to so many other factors that are changing in their lives. But I think, you know, coming down to your question, that is a very fundamental aspect of the profession itself, just making sure that those relationships do continue and stay consistent as the years go on.
Yeah, and you touched on so many important things there in terms of the determinants of what's going on outside of school that might affect them in school life. But I just couldn't agree with you more on the fact that imparting that confidence onto kids and that belief in themselves onto kids is something that sets them up for the rest of their life. Because I tutor kids as well on the side. And obviously I'm not a teacher in a professional setting, but I have noticed
a teacher in your own right, no worries.
But I have noticed that in those lessons, when you start off by bringing the confidence out in a child, they can do so much better throughout all of it. And maths is a subject that a lot of kids do find difficult, but when you start off and you build up their confidence and you say, look, you can do these things, you know, whoever's telling you that you can't do it, they're not right, because you have the brain power to work it out. They feel good about it, they feel happy, and they want to do more questions, they want to see where they can go in terms of their potential. And I think that's the thing that, you know, we can put our minds at ease with teachers like you out there, because we know that you're imparting that confidence onto the kids that they're going to need in the future. Yeah, 100%. It's something that I feel like it's so important, but it doesn't get as much attention, you know,
because that's the thing. And I think sometimes it comes down to society as well, and what we find important or find it's sometimes dwelling on the negatives. You know, okay, behavior going into teaching is negative because you're going to be shouting and raising your voice, and sometimes it might lead into certain situations when you are teaching a 21-hour timetable and you're like, out of frustration more so, but never more so out of pure anger, because that doesn't happen. And you come into the profession, one thing I would say, come into the profession knowing that you want to help these young people. I'm always adamant, and I would always stick to this, because that's the same opinion I would give to myself, is once you lose that passion, it's time for you to leave. And I say that, and I know there's a retention rate going out in the profession at the moment, but once you lose that compassion and that passion itself, I just don't think that it's the profession for you, because you do need so much. You do need a lot of patience. Yeah. At the end of the day, they are and it's that same quote that it takes a village to raise a child. It really 100%. Does. And it's that passion, and it's that encouragement, and it's that might, knowing that sometimes when you're going through something a little bit on the difficult side, that you can put that aside, and knowing that you're nourishing a career. Yeah. You're nourishing a young person. You're giving them that sense of belonging in that classroom, and that belonging for their learning, and that love for learning. And I think that's really, really important.
You're nourishing
and never,
the future
never ever lose track of that, especially in the profession. Having that passion.
That's a beautiful sentiment to end on, I think. Thank you so much for joining us, Aqsa, and talking about such an important topic. Like I said, we can be rest assured with teachers like you out there who are, you know, helping the next generation have that confidence in life and being able to navigate that. And I guess let's all take a second to think about our teachers back in the day and actually thank them for all the stuff that they've been through.
Absolutely.
Honestly, because you always remember your teachers at the end of the day.
You do.
But please do join us next week, inshallah. We'll be back with another show. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. We stream our daily broadcast on inspirefm.org. You'll find all our daily updates on our social media at Inspire FM Luton.